150 years ago or 200 years ago when the blacks were slaves, did they ever go to Washington, D.C. and have a rally 200 years ago to protest against slavery? Did they? No. What did they do? Well, a lot of good people in the plantations would say, hey, it's wintertime. Let us help build a church for you, dear folks. And they loved them and taught them how to read so they can read the Bible. And here's what the blacks did about 150 years ago. They humbled themselves. They prayed. They sought God's face and they turned from their wicked ways. And God made slavery illegal through several white presidents, right? It worked, didn't it?
You know, oftentimes I get ridiculed by black Christians and Hebrew Israelites as far as affirming that this Bible condones the transatlantic slave trade. And these people will support it. And they will support it and try to justify it in ways of talking about indentured servitude or that the children of Israel were disobedient and so they were put into 400 years of slavery. They like to put it in a nice, neat package. But as you just saw, this is the mentality to which this book propagates on the human psyche over and over again. This is not 200, 300 years ago, 500, 600 years ago of a Caucasian justifying the transatlantic slavery, the enslavement of the melanated people, the manifest destiny of Europeans across America. This man in a church in Dallas, Texas, where he is the father-in-law to the pastor, I believe, or his child is the daughter-in-law of the pastor, some situation of that nature. And although the church came out and apologized, at no point did you see somebody come up there and shut this man down if they were truly appalled by everything that he said. He said that 100, 200 to 150 years ago, so 100 years ago would be the 1920s. 50 more years past that, you're looking at 1870s. So he's saying that because black people were living a vile lifestyle, that they were within their rights to go to Africa, to come to the Americas, and enslave the indigenous people of both continents, all three continents, and make them into slaves. But it took 200 plus years of enslavement for these black people of that time frame to humble themselves. And when the good white people, the good Caucasians, saw that these black people had humbled themselves, or the blacks, as he liked to call us, humbled themselves, they built churches for them because it was cold in the wintertime. Were they sleeping outside? Were they shivering and freezing? Then taught them how to read the Bible. Taught them to read the slave Bible in the Caribbean and in South America. Told them what parts of the Bible they could and could not read in the Americas. Taught them to read the Bible, and after they humbled themselves through a succession of great Caucasian presidents, black people were able to gain their freedom. He said they didn't go to the White House and protest, because this is a person who looks at the 2009, whenever that was, that protest, it wasn't 2009, that was way off, but the protest of January 9th, that protest of the Trumpists, that why didn't black people go do that? Oh, they must have been happy because they had humbled themselves. They must have been happy and enjoyed their slavery and wanted to be slaves. And they were happy. These dear people were happy to be enslaved for generations upon generations. Never mind that by the time frame that he's speaking, these children of those enslaved people were born into an indoctrination of Christianity where they were expected to learn that their enslavement was based on the Bible, and that they need to wait for heaven later, that this was the arrangement that this deity sought for them. As the Hebrew Israelites will tell you, this is the punishment for their disobedience, and that they suffered through 400 years of enslavement because of their disobedience. And so they would agree with this man. Any Hebrew Israelites come on here and tell me that they don't agree with this man, you are lying to yourself, because he is basically invoking the same rhetoric to which you speak of, just in a different way that you may not like it. But he's saying that we did not go and protest. There were slave revolts throughout the colonization of America, but we didn't march on DC. We didn't protest it. As if the enslaved people of that day could have easily just protested, hoped to get the ballot, and then go back and to their masters and continue to be enslaved, waiting for these great Caucasian presidents to release them from this enslavement. This is the mentality that I had to break away from when I walked away from this religion. People are going to comment saying that they stole a book for the people of color and that they interpreted it incorrectly. But no, I'm sorry. Your Bible in Leviticus, I believe 25, says that you can take slaves of those foreigners living amongst you and the slaves that are in other nations and make them slaves in perpetuity, that you can pass them down from generation to generation and continue to make them your slaves. It was Gregory the Fifth, I believe, or Nicholas the Fifth, after Clement the Fourth, said that, hey, go down into Africa, find those who are not Christian, and make them into slaves. Take their land, take their resources, take their people, and make them into your slaves in perpetuity. It is this Christian religion that has enslaved the mind as well as the body of our ancestors, where you are indigenous or not. And if you think that this is justified by this book, then you are still an enslaved person and will always and forever remain an enslaved person. The only reason slavery ended in America was through bloodshed, through war. It was not through the ballot, but through war. And that war was only done in order to maintain the Union. As Lincoln said, this great Caucasian president said, if he could have kept the Union without freeing one slave, he would have. He had no intentions of being the great so-called emancipator. It was a political move that made him an emancipator. But if you want to continue to believe this book, to follow the immorality of this book, then go ahead. But for those of us who have awakened to our consciousness, we recognize the damnation, the corruption, the immorality of this book and the deity to which it is inspired by. Until we free ourselves from this, we will continue to be their slaves. Maybe not physically, but financially and mentally. This is why we have to create and form our own economy within this nation and trade with other nations of people of color to gain our freedom. This is why I call for every person of color in the Americas to sweep into the Southeast, from Houston and Dallas, Texas, through Louisiana, portions of Arkansas, portions of Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and Florida, and control every town, every community, every county, every state, and then emancipate ourselves financially, and then emancipate ourselves mentally, and then the final stroke, emancipate ourselves nationally from this country that is built on the enslavement of people, the mistreatment of people, the oppression of people, and create our own society that is governed by us, that is governed for us, so that we can truly have the freedom that every person on this planet truly deserves to have. Until such a thing happens, we will always, always in this country be the oppressed group. So I'm calling for all of you to start moving to every county, every city across the Southeast. Until we do and make a bold statement of such, we will never have our freedom. Because you have to free yourself to be yourself. Otherwise, our national greatness will never be realized. So, good journey, good vibrations. The movement begins now.